What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're continuing on my Harry Potter series of reviews with my buddy Rashad of Rashad Reviews as we touch on the next installment in the franchise leading up to the two-part finale, and that is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Directed by David Yates and once again written by Steve Kloves and J.K. Rowling, this film stars once again people like Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, Michael Gambon, and so many more. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my review for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Before we get too far into this, I'd like to say a big thanks to all of you beautiful people for clicking here on this video. As usual, I'm joined once again in this series by my buddy Rashad of Rashad Reviews, who unfortunately has just not enjoyed this series at all up to this point, whereas I have. You guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box as usual, and just as a kind of setup for this, in case this is your first Harry Potter video on the channel, I am not a fan of the books. I've just never read them. I'm not really familiar with the little details that were missed when it comes to the translation from book to screen. So this is just solely reviews on my opinion as a movie fan, and I am a fan of this franchise. I've had a lot of fun with it over the years. I've revisited every film multiple times. I've visited the theme park attractions, and overall Harry Potter is definitely a franchise I am pretty, hyped on. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the fantastical world. I enjoy the characters. And today we're talking about the Half-Blood Prince, the film that comes right before the finale that they decided to split into two parts, where a lot of other franchises decided to split their finales into two parts. Franchises like Twilight as well as The Hunger Games definitely took some notes from Harry Potter and how they approached their finale. And the Half-Blood Prince is an interesting one because it's a dialogue heavy film that doesn't really have a villain of its own, doesn't really have much of its own threat per se, but at the same time is a film that really expands upon the lore when it comes to Tom Riddle or Voldemort, of course, and really expands upon the story and the things needed to know as we move into the final two films in this franchise. And so let's touch on what this film is basically about before I go ahead and throw it on over to my buddy Rashad, and then we'll get back to the rest of my thoughts in just a moment. So when the Half-Blood Prince opens up, you have Dumbledore getting Harry Potter to go on a little trip with him, and they decide to go find a wizard, old professor who used to work at Hogwarts. This guy's named Professor Slughorn, who's played by Jim Broadbent. And when they go and find him, he's in hiding because Voldemort's people have been looking for him to try to recruit him to the Death Eaters. And now the Death Eaters and just pretty much all of Voldemort's army are trying to get into Hogwarts consistently, with Hogwarts now having to essentially put out a bit of a cautionary warning to all of their students to not leave the grounds, to be very careful. And over the course of the film, we do see that there's a force field, a magical force field over the school, and there are times where some of these Death Eaters are trying to get into the school. After convincing Professor Slughorn to come back to Hogwarts to teach, we end up learning that there was a very specific reason for this. The reason is that Dumbledore knows of a conversation that Slughorn had had with Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, many years in the past, where he may have given him some very specific details that set Voldemort on the path that he would continue on. And this is a movie specifically mainly about learning more about Voldemort. We spent a lot more time in flashbacks with a younger Voldemort here, a younger Tom Riddle, learning about how he started to kind of have some interest in the dark arts, how he started to learn things that he needed to do in order to become the powerhouse that he would eventually be. We see Dumbledore go to initially recruit him and bring him in to Hogwarts, and essentially this is a film that really expands upon the lore and the story and the explanation around who Voldemort is and how he came to be who he is. So after Slughorn ends up coming back, we learn that he's going to be a potions teacher, and Harry Potter is put in that class with him. Once Harry gets into the class though, he ends up getting an alchemy book like everybody else does, except his is very specific and is written inside, signed by somebody known as the Half-Blood Prince. And over the course of the movie, he reads through this book, this regular school textbook that has a bunch of writing and scratching in it that will give him notes and detail on how to actually do something, a lot of times completely throwing away what the book says and it being scratched out and having a completely different explanation to actually attain what you want to obtain. And over the course of the film, it's 110% assumed that this book belonged to Tom Riddle, as a lot of the time spent with this book is kind of intermixed with these flashbacks that have to do with Tom Riddle, learning about him kind of trying to figure out everything he can to become the dark wizard that he does become later on. Except that's not exactly the case, and we'll talk about that on the second half of this review. But yeah, over the course of the film, beyond that going on, you have some stuff that maybe doesn't matter as much, like some Quidditch stuff and some romance stuff that just sets up the futures of this franchise. But the most notable thing here is, in terms of story, is over the course of the film, a character that doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue but is very present is Tom Felton's Draco Malfoy, who we now know has been inducted into the Death Eaters. He's now officially part of Voldemort's army. There's a scene near the beginning of the film where Harry, Hermione, and Ron do see him kind of being inducted into the Death Eaters, and over the course of the film, he's mainly our looming threat. A lot of times just kind of being in the background or in the corner of a shot, definitely just kind of leading us to believe that, again, he is a looming threat. And that's where this film isn't its strongest when it comes to some of the villain elements of this film. There isn't really a villain. It feels like the villains are very much in the background, scheming and kind of plotting, and it isn't really until the last like 15-20 minutes that a lot of that stuff starts to pop off with the villains. I do enjoy this film and I enjoy the time spent with the villains, but I do think that had one of them had a little bit more of a focal point and been a little bit more involved, maybe it would have made for a little bit of a stronger story. But where they do shine with that, though, is that Draco Malfoy is this looming threat throughout that ends up leading to the finale we get to, which we will talk about in just a little bit. And there's definitely more to talk about when it comes to this movie, but let me go ahead and throw it on over to Rashad of Rashad Reviews, and we'll get back to my thoughts in just a moment.
So Perez, thank you for inviting me to review another Harry Potter joint. I thought these movies would get better with each installment, but unfortunately I was wrong. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. By the time this movie was over with, I don't know who the Half-Blood Prince even is. Listen, I can appreciate sometimes a slow burn, but in this movie, the match wasn't even lit. Alright? There was no even fight. Like, this has got to be one of the slowest, boringest, big budget action movies, so-called action movies I've ever seen in my life. This was just, like, what? This was terrible. My God, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince? They should have been called Harry Potter and the freaking... Like, come on, man!
Pop, you pressure!
So boring, alright? I don't... Listen, Perez, I'm just gonna keep it a buck. Alright? The Critic Hat and then Kobe in the trash. I don't know what this movie is about. I don't know what the plot is. All I know is that the film itself just looked murky and dull. And the characters are boring. Was there even a villain? I guess the little kid that was supposed to be like, I guess the Harry Potter version of Magneto. He's like freaking invincible. Like, what is the appeal of these movies? I still don't.
Stop, your pressure.
Thank you, son. Because I tried, y'all. Look, it took me about 5 days to watch this movie. It's on Peacock. I tried to watch it. I tried to look at it, and I kept falling asleep, or I'm losing interest. I started playing puzzle games. I even turn on my projector, and I'm watching like old episodes of A Living Color while this is playing. I don't understand. Like this, I don't get it. It's terrible. And Perez, I'm pretty sure, because I know you have love for these movies, man. I ain't trying to diss, and I know you're gonna go into what's special about it and everything else. But me, I just don't get it. Maybe I just have a puny-ass brain. Maybe I just don't know shit when it comes to movies.
Pop, your pressure.
That's all I want to say. All right, to keep myself from getting even more belligerent, I'm just going to end it with this. This is probably the worst of the Harry Potter movies that I've seen. The worst. Boring. Slow. Not even a slow burn. Like I said, this match is not even lit. It's just boring. That's all I can say. It's boring and unwatchable. You know, it's sad. Yo, yesterday I had a double feature. I watched Evil Dead 2013 to get me ready for the new Evil Dead movie, and then I watched A Man Called Otto, Tom Hanks. Now, how is it a movie called A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks that's supposed to be a heartfelt drama, how did that have more passion, more enthusiasm, and more action than a Harry Potter movie? And it's supposed to be $250 million budget? And A Man Called Otto was more exciting than that? Ooh, I'm on a broom, I'm flying and throwing football through the hole, hey! Who gives a shit?
Pop pressure film?
Yeah, y'all, I don't even want to give this a grade. I don't even want to give this a grade.
What grade it is?
I can't give it a grade. I just didn't, you know. So, Perez, I apologize. I can't tell you what I liked about anything about it. All I know is that Harry Potter's still Harry Potter. His friends are annoying and bland. You know, the one girl, I guess she's crushing on the redheaded boy. And I don't know and I don't care.
Crushing on the redhead boy?
Yeah, the girl crushing on the redhead boy.
He was a devil?
No, not quite. But they say witchcraft is the devil, so is Harry Potter technically the devil? Anyways, yeah, so I guess we have Deathly Hallows Part 1 next, Deathly Hallows 2 next. It's almost over. Thank God.
Yeah, because you almost you almost shattered your phone.
Alright, y'all. This is Rashad G signing out. See you in the next video.
Yeah, me too, because, in it.
Rashad. I'm going to throw a little shade here. I'm just going to throw a little shade. I'm usually really cool about anybody watching a movie that I invite them on to talk about and them not liking it. It's happened tons of times with Rashad, for example, and it's happened with tons of other people. But 5 days to watch this movie, bro, and you were watching another show at a certain point, episodes of another show, and you were playing puzzle games on your phone? I'm sorry, bro. That's just disrespect, bro. That's just disrespect. I have watched so many garbage movies for your channel that I would never want to see ever again in my life, that have nothing to them, that are just bad. And I've sat there and I haven't pulled out my phone and I haven't watched another show, or I haven't taken multiple days to view it. Of course you didn't know what was going on here. Of course you didn't know who the Half-Blood Prince was. You weren't paying attention. You took 5 days to watch a movie that's very heavily, set in dialogue. You took 5 days to watch a movie, watching other shows in the meantime, and you were playing puzzle games on your phone. You're like, you don't know who the Half-Blood Prince is. They said it in the movie.
I'm the Half-Blood Prince.
So, yeah, guys, that's Rashad's thoughts. As usual, the link to his channel is down below in the description box. Go give him some love or some hate. I'm just kidding. Don't give him any hate. But, Rashad, come on, bro. You didn't watch this movie. Thanks for being here, but you didn't watch this movie. All right, so let's get into the rest of my thoughts on this movie. I already set up the base premise. You have Slughorn here in the school. Harry has kind of been tasked by Dumbledore to kind of learn some more, get closer to Slughorn, so you can try to figure out what it is that all those years before Slughorn had told Tom Riddle. And we find out throughout the course of the film that there was a memory that Slughorn had kind of altered in his life, where he pretty much was asked by Tom Riddle about some dark magic, specifically something called a Horcrux.
I read something rather odd about a bit of rare magic. It's called, as I understand it, Horcrux.
I beg your pardon?
And we learn later on that he actually told Tom Riddle what this Horcrux is. And the Horcrux is going to be a big part of the upcoming films. Essentially, it is the ability to split your soul into various items, and you can split it into more than one item, which is a big thing moving forward with the finale of the film. And that's what Tom Riddle was trying to figure out. The ability to have your physical body killed, but still be active, still be alive, with your soul being split into these various items across the world. And so that's something that's going to be a huge part, like I mentioned, in the next films. But in this film, it's nice to see this adventure that you have Harry going on. Again, you have this book, this alchemy book that he thinks is Tom Riddle's pretty much for a big percentage of the film. He's learning all these different secrets and tricks over the course of the movie. He knows how to do things in class that other people can't do because the book has all these notes written in it and literally lines of the book scratched out with new information written in to kind of cheat your way to get the same results and find an easier way to get there without having to go through what the book actually says. And we learn at the later half of the film that it's actually Snape's book from back when he was a student at Hogwarts. Over the course of the film, we see that Snape is far more more involved with the Death Eaters. Of course, we know why that is as we get into the final 2 films in this franchise, but for now, of course, it seems like Snape has just completely turned his back on Hogwarts, the kids, Dumbledore, and all that stuff, as he's very, very heavily involved with everything going on with the Death Eaters in this film. And so yeah, we end up finding out near the end of the movie that this book, this Half-Blood Prince titled book or signed book, actually belonged to Snape all those years ago, and he was the one who had written all those notes in the book that were helping Harry over the course of the film. And throughout the course of the film, there's some big stake moments that happen, like the Weasleys' homes being completely destroyed. Thankfully, nobody ends up dying, of course. And of course, the most notable thing being at the very end, Dumbledore's death, which I remember being such a sad moment in the theaters when I went to see it. Of course, plenty of people had read the books already, so they knew it was coming. And I really love that sequence. I love that Draco Malfoy really just wants to be invested in the dark arts and stuff like that. But as soon as he has the opportunity to work under Voldemort, he's afraid. He's doing it out of fear. He's doing anything he can for the Dark Lord and for the Death Eaters out of fear. His dad was part of Death Eaters, so now he's of course feels this need to kind of follow in his dad's footsteps. You can tell that he's really struggling with it over the course of the film. You know, this little kind of snotty-nosed bitch ass kid over the course of the films who was always rude to Harry and the rest of the crew. You know, he just always wanted to be the bad guy. He always wanted to be the antagonist, and then he gets the chance to do that, and he's struggling with it. He's having a battle of character over the course of this film, which is why most of the film just has him kind of looming in the background, because you can tell that he's plotting something, you can tell that he's working towards something. A lot of times the film doesn't really lay out what that is until we get to the later part of the movie, and you just can tell that he's really struggling with this, that it's weighing heavy on his heart. And I think that Tom Felton gives a fantastic performance as Draco in this movie. Really thoroughly enjoy his time spent on screen. You can tell that he, again, it has the weight of the world on his shoulders. And as he gets to the later part of the film and he's the one who's tasked with killing Dumbledore, of course Snape ends up stepping up for him and doing it because he already knows that if he doesn't, that Voldemort's going to come for Draco. And so he chooses to do this for him, mainly because at the beginning of the movie he actually made an unbreakable bond, an unbreakable curse kind of commitment with Draco's mother at the beginning part of the film that pretty much made it so that if he doesn't protect Draco, he will end up getting killed, or he will end up dying, obviously via magic. So he knows that if Draco, because he was tasked with killing Dumbledore, doesn't kill Dumbledore, then unfortunately Draco will end up being killed by Voldemort. So yeah, he has to kind of step in. He ends up having to kill Dumbledore, and Dumbledore kind of knows this is all going to come. Dumbledore knows this is all going to happen. Speaking on Dumbledore, love the sequence with Harry and Dumbledore when they go to get a very specific artifact in this film, and they're surrounded by all these like zombie creatures, and there's fire, and really love that sequence. Really enjoy the visuals of this film as well. I do agree with Rashad's opinion of the film looking a little bit murky. I think that's one of my criticisms of David Yates as a director overall. There are times in some of these films and some of the artistic style he chose that where the film does look a little bit muddy. At times with the darker tones of this film, I do think it works, but there are times throughout the course of the film where I feel like it maybe could have been handled a little bit differently. There are some scenes and some shots that just do look a little bit muddied, but I really enjoy the darker sequences in this film. They have big fun action and stuff like that. And speaking on the moments where it doesn't work, Quidditch is in this movie, and it's just kind of breezed over. It's a segment of the movie that feels like it's kind of important for a little bit. Ron kind of sucks at it, and then he's actually kind of good at it because he thinks he took a luck potion that Harry had gotten earlier in the film, and it kind of really is only present for him to end up getting this love interest in the film, even though she was already kind of all over him before he was even doing Quidditch. And so there's this girl that ends up falling for Ron over the course of the film, which is really only there to really set up the fact that Hermione actually has feelings for Ron, which they were slowly setting up in the previous films. So she's heartbroken to see that he's actually with somebody else, and it's just a lot of teenage romance drama that of course ends with the fact that this girl ends up no longer being with Ron, as she realizes that Ron actually cares more for Hermione, which again is kind of just setting up for the future. And then on the romance side of things, the one thing that has just never worked for me in these movies, no matter how much I enjoy these movies and I enjoy these characters, is the character of Ginny Weasley in these films. The romance between her and Harry is just kind of cringy to me, because the actress they chose to play Ginny, Bonnie Wright, she just never really worked in this movie for me. She never really worked in these movies for me. She's literally just plain white completely unseasoned, not even salted rice. She's just as bland as possible when it comes to her performance, and I just never really bought into the fact that the main character in this franchise would have a romance with her, especially with some of the girls that have kind of winked or made silly comments or maybe liked Harry in some of the previous films. The fact that he ends up with Ginny has never made sense with me. Maybe in the books it makes a lot more sense. Perhaps Ginny in the books has a lot more personality. But as far as this movie, when it comes to it really just diving deeper into them having a romance, I just never really buy into the character of Ginny. I don't have anything against Bonnie Wright, who plays the character, but I just always felt that she had a very, very bland performance, and there's really not much about her performance that I ever really cling to. There's really not much about her and Harry that ever really feels naturally charismatic. And outside of the romance stuff and some stuff like Quidditch that kind of just feels like breezed over and not all that needed in the film, I find this to be a really good time. It is a slower film in the franchise. It is a film that is very heavily set on dialogue. It is a film that very much expands upon story and lore more so than it is about action. There is the fun action near the end, like I said, with Dumbledore and Harry having to fight off this hordes of zombie-like creatures, and then there's of course a great sequence later on with the Weasley's house. Like I said, it gets burned down, but there's a great sequence with some of the villains there that do show up, and this is a movie very much setting up the next installments. I feel like, even though I'm not looking forward to the upcoming Harry Potter reboot TV series, where each movie, as we see them here, or each book is going to be told over the course of a season, even though I'm not looking forward to that, and I don't necessarily feel like we need that because I really, really enjoy these movies, and the movies aren't really that old at all, this is probably the one movie that I could say that the story is paced in a way where I can understand telling the story over the course of a season more so than in a movie. Do we absolutely need it? No, but I can understand because there are times throughout the course of the film where they reference some time gaps and some things that have happened that maybe could have been fleshed out a little bit more, maybe would have worked a little bit better if there was a little bit more time for certain story beats to breathe. But the movie ends with Dumbledore being killed by Snape. People assume it's Draco, but of course we know it was Snape, and Harry did see that. Harry had to sit on the sidelines and watch Dumbledore be killed, and of course now the Death Eaters made their way into Hogwarts due to Tom Felton's Draco character. It was his fault that they got in there at all, and they end up taking Draco. Voldemort's coming in the upcoming films. The headmaster is being killed. We find out about the Horcruxes and how Voldemort learned of this ability to split his soul into multiple things. We learn that the Half-Blood Prince is in fact Snape. And we set up for the future where things look doom and gloom, and now the biggest threat for these characters is starting to come. Again, a big thanks to you guys for watching. Sorry if this was a little bit rambly at times. I just wrote a few notes and I just kind of wanted to talk about the movies. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm rather heartbroken by Rashad's take on the movie. Not because he just didn't like it, but because he clearly did not pay attention. But as usual, big thanks to Rashad for joining me here. You guys can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Go give him some love, let him know I sent you. But for you guys, the question is, what do you guys think about the Half-Blood Prince? I've seen some people call this the greatest in the franchise. I've seen some people say that they would love this movie. I've seen some people say it's a middle of the road film for them in the franchise. And now we have Rashad saying the movie was absolutely terrible and unwatchable. So where do you sit when it comes to the Half-Blood Prince? Do you enjoy this film? Do you not enjoy this film? Leave any and all comments down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.